Exposing subhumanity since 2014, this is Common Filth Radio, episode 101. Also available is the new episode of Common Filth Extra, episode 30 of that at commonfilthradio.bandcamp.com. And on this newest edition of Common Filth Extra, I talk about our elite's obsession with immortality and what that says about them. Go figure that most of them are reprobate sodomites. That's why they want to live forever. They are afraid of what comes after death, which is why they wish to dwell on this earth forever and make life miserable for those living at the same time as them. And it's a new look. Yes, it is. And I hope you are enjoying the new look. So imagine, if you will, picture it right now. All of the 18-year-old white trash mamas out there having baby boys, and they're naming their baby boys Caitlyn because they get their culture from basic cable reality television, and they also get their culture from the cash register at the grocery store. Ooh, look, magazines. Oh, Bruce Jenner's a Caitlyn now? I'm gonna name my child Caitlyn. I'm gonna name my male child Caitlyn. And this assumes they're sticking within the tribe to have babies. I imagine if they shacked up with some slave descendants that Jerome wouldn't have it. No, bitch, fuck that shit, nigga. I know everybody has an opinion on old Bruce Jenner and what happened to him, but the more I think about it, the more that time passes from that to now, from when he's like, I'm a girl, to now, the more ridiculous it gets, because let's take the name that he chose for himself, Caitlyn. You know, that is the most painfully millennial, post-millennial name you could possibly think of. If this is really how he always felt forever and ever, he would have named himself Brenda. You know, a popular name during the time in which he was born. But no, he chose Caitlyn, which begins with a K sound. KKK. KKK. Yep, all the KKKs have mixed, confused people in them, and it's not just the Ku Klux Klan. No, he named himself a very similar name to his daughters and stepdaughters, which shows you how perverse he is, that he wants that kind of attention. That he too wants to be famous for having sex with a black dude on camera. European men have a huge problem, and potential mongrelization has very little to do with it. Men of white stock look towards the opposite sex for their social cues. They want to be led around by the nose by their women, or they want to become women themselves. And this assumes a pre-existing interest in women, which, if that YouGov poll is to be believed, 54% of Anglo youth are queers, have queered off at some point, and yeah, it's kind of disturbing. But you know what? I believe it. This is actually not what I was going to read, but I'll read this in addition to what I'm about to read. This was sent to me from a loyal Twitter follower here. Do you follow me? Yes, you do. So this is a screenshot that says, transsexual women are increasingly more beautiful and feminine than previous generations of transsexuals. Medical science has made many advances in the science of gender reassignment, and new experimental advances promise to develop procedures that will make transsexuals indistinguishable from biological females. In other words, transsexual women with a uterus, the ability to self-produce estrogen, and completely feminine skeletal muscle and organic composition. Okay, I understand. It's like organic apple composition, organic produce, but yeah, organs, hearts, lungs, whatever. In the near future, you may be dating a hot female whose DNA marker is XY. Swallow the pill and enjoy the ride, Pull. If a trans woman was completely fertile, would it still be degenerate? Would you abandon the vaginal Jew? and then somebody responded to that by saying, vaginal Jew, I'm not going to say this word, the Trumpists, we'll just call them that. The Trumpists literally think biology is a Jewish conspiracy. They literally think biology is a Jewish conspiracy, and that is very articulate, beautifully put. So this is what I was going to read before that detour there. And this also came from a Twitter follower, another screenshot from some image board. It says, meet a cute girl. Talk to her for a while. She is red-pilled, knows lots of stuff, has very interesting original opinions, has a decent paying job, talk for a long while. She looks a bit into me, find out she is a tranny. Fuck, I meet a decent, clever woman for once and it was a man. Seriously, the lack of good women is gonna end up turning me into a homo. Well, you have to look at what your definition of a decent woman is. And your definition of a decent woman is not loyal, chaste, nice, reads the Bible. You know, those are 4 good things right there. 4 good benchmarks. Now take out your notebooks, everybody. Take out your notebooks and write this down. Better to be blue-pilled than red suppositoried. Write that down, put it on a post-it note, stick it on your door, so every time you leave your bedroom, you're reminded of that. Because if your definition of a decent woman is red-pilled, knows lots of stuff, has very interesting original opinions, and has a decent paying job, kill yourself, because you have been given over to a reprobate mind. It's interesting, we reverse engineer it. We think like, oh, this deviant idiot has the same opinions as me. All deviant idiots must be okay then. When in reality, you should be thinking to yourself, wait, this retard, this subhuman has the same opinions as me? I'm agreeing with them? I need to reassess who I am. I need to reassess my views on life. That's what you should be thinking. So thank you to the individual who sent me that screenshot. Very illuminating. I responded with, we should find apolitical girls who are into being nice and reading the Bible. Girls into politics are not girls. Now, she could be into social issues. In fact, that might be a better sign that she's got her head on straight, because she's thinking about a world that she's going to bring children into, right? A girl who pays attention to social cultural issues might not want her son to enter an organization like the Boy Scouts where homosexuals have access to these boys. If a girl concerns herself with an issue like that, she's probably decent. Probably a decent person to build a life with. One who would be interested in creating a good home, building a life with a decent man. But I got these responses here, and here's the rub. People got really mad at this. White women, go figure, right? They said, or she said, when I find a husband, I'll quit caring about politics. In the meantime, I'll do my duty as a citizen of the U.S. Isn't it interesting that you are more interested in playing politics on Twitter than you are with finding somebody to raise a good family with? I bet you ladies think you're doing real well by playing politics on Twitter, but in reality, you're just an emblem of your tribe's decline, of your civilization's decline. Just as your male counterparts turn every strange thing possible into a pagan religion, you ladies cosplay as something with a Y chromosome. If you spend equal or greater time playing politics on Twitter or other social media platforms than you do maintaining your home, you are an emblem of your own decline. You render yourself into a problem when you think you're providing a solution. I have ladies in my audience, and they know what I'm talking about. All of the things I talk about contribute to a very bleak future for their children. And most of society thinks that these things that are part of the present zeitgeist are positive. That's if you're a left-winger. If you're a clueless right-winger, you think, it doesn't affect you, bro. It doesn't affect you. Social issues don't affect you. The culture doesn't affect you. Tell that to the tens of thousands of male-on-male rape victims in the military. I've seen a lot of hand-wringing over the last 2 weeks about Trump's declining poll numbers, and right now they made a day-over-day recovery a little bit, but he's still down 6-something points according to the Real Clear Politics averages. But you see lots of clueless right-wingers bitching about evangelicals when Trump's declining poll numbers really have nothing to do with that. And who knows if they'll stay declining. And really, who gives a shit? And I don't even know what an evangelical is. I don't. To me, when it's used, it just refers to anybody who holds themselves to God's standard, and not some ever-changing standard invented by some white retard on the internet who tells you how to vote and how to behave and you know what affects you and what doesn't. Yeah, what cucks those evangelicals are for not wanting their children to be victims of institutionally approved gay rape. But I've had conversations with people who would vote Trump, you know, white, you know, middle-aged men, and they say, like, who is he? He says, oh, build the wall, but keep the H-1B1 visas coming in. Trump says, we're going to be Christian, and we're going to show that by saying Merry Christmas and not Happy Holidays. And then he turns around and says, oh, we'll be better for LGBTQ people than Clinton. And when you point out that he shucks and jives for the sodomite lobby, people will say, oh, well, he doesn't really mean that. Well, how do I know what he means and what he doesn't? I'm supposed to accept it all at face value here. They can't make up their mind. These people who are freaking out about declining poll numbers, they say Trump isn't politically correct. That's why he's popular. And then they say, well, he has to pander to different groups to get votes. They say, Trump is going to get things done. No more symbolic politics. And they say, well, he might not get anything done, but he's important because he pushes the Overton window. So none of it makes any sense, his supporters' views on what he can accomplish or what he can do. You know, people say, like, oh, he'll be the worst for the Jews, even though he's shucking and jiving for Israel, calling them our greatest ally. How often have we heard that? How is that any different from the towing the neocon line? I don't get it. The only argument that held any water for me is the argument that Trump's Supreme Court choices will be better than Clinton's most likely. And, you know, I thought about it hard. I thought, yeah, maybe it's like a 50-50 shot that he'll put some good people on the bench. But then I remembered the reason why we have sodomitical marriage is because of a Reagan appointment. So either way, you're going to get Christ-hating Jews or Jesuits on the bench. You know, if Trump were sincere about doing anything about the sodomy problem, he doesn't think it's one, he would shut up about it. He wouldn't say anything about it. And if he were to do anything about it, and I know it's not a winnable issue. 60% of people support sodomy, so you gotta kowtow to it. Let me bring this issue up again. You can frame the issue in such a way that it will appeal to American sensibilities. After all, the military is one of America's many pagan idols. And I'll read to you. This military suffers a wave of gay sex assaults. I've read this before, but we need to read it again to show you what happens when you turn your military into a DMV, when you turn it into an affirmative action employment organization for homosexuals and brown people. This is from WND.com. A recent military report on sexual assault in the military shocked many in Washington and around the nation. But a leading expert on military personnel revealed the prevalence of men assaulting other men is one of the major headlines in the study. And this was a study done back in 2012. I don't know what the updated current year statistics are, but the military has gotten progressively worse under Barack Hussein Obama, not better. So I imagine they're not too different than when this study took place. So the extended analysis of the report first appeared in Monday's edition of the Washington Times. The Defense Department survey of sexual assault in the military during fiscal 2012 estimated that 26,000 assaults took place in the armed forces. Nearly 3,000 of them were formally reported. Just more than 6% of women reported being victims of assault, and 1.2% of men said the same. Given the much larger number of men in the military, those numbers suggest 14,000 of the assaults in the Pentagon study happened to men, and that's out of 26,000, so it's more than half. More than half of sexual assault victims in the military are men. Among the assaults formally reported, 88% of the reports came from women and 12% from men. And those are the reported occurrences, and men are less likely to report them after all. The number of reports of sexual assault among military personnel have actually increased by 129% since 2014. said Center for Military Readiness President Elaine Donnelly, who pointed out the number of formal reports of sexual assault jumped from 1,275 to just under 3,000 in 8 years. She told WND when factoring in civilians working for or around the military, the increase in that time is 98%. Women are identified as the attacker in just 2% of all assaults, meaning most men who suffer assault are targeted by other men. So we got a male-on-male problem here. The Department of Defense doesn't want to comment on this. They know the numbers are there. They say that they care, but all the attention is usually given to the female members of the military who are subjected to sexual assault. So, and we're going to cross-reference this with another WND article that was written some months before that one. So this one was done in April of 2012. Now men are victims of military sex assaults. Male-on-male attacks up since the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. While the full picture remains far from clear signs of the ill effects of the Democrat-initiated law allowing homosexuals to serve in the U.S. military without hiding their sexual preference are beginning to appear. The newest reports for fiscal year 2011 have just come out, and Elaine Donnelly, president of the Center for Military Readiness, immediately noted that sexual misbehavior is on the rise. She has completed an analysis of the reports, including the overall military assessment of sexual assaults, as well as the Army's Gold Book report, and cites 515 rapes, 414 aggravated sexual assaults, and 349 forcible sodomies documented by just the Criminal Investigation Command in 2011. The Pentagon officials regularly praise their own work and proclaim undeserved success, even though evidence of sexual misconduct, both consensual and non-consensual, continues to accelerate year after year. She said, "It is time to reconsider and change flawed policies that are weakening the culture of the only military we have." In December 2010, Congress repealed the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy established by President Clinton that allowed homosexuals to remain in the military on the condition they not make a public issue of their sexual lifestyle. New law, for the first time in U.S. history, allows homosexual members to openly acknowledge their sexual choices. And how? Among the details in the reports, while since 2006, 5% of the violent sexual assaults have been against men, recent reports now put that figure at 12 to 14%. As the acceptance of sodomy, the acknowledgement of it, the lie we tell to ourselves about it, as it grows more prevalent in our culture, so too grows the male-on-male rape epidemic, and not just the military, but everywhere. A disturbing number of Catholic priests are sodomites. The Catholic Church finds itself embroiled in scandal after scandal after scandal involving the rape of young boys. If anybody important is listening to this, there you go. I just gave you your angle. You can exploit America's pagan sensibilities against this thing that is an incredibly important issue. But I'm talking to a wall. After all, America is the vehicle through which Satan enters the earth. I'm appealing to the soul of the soulless. I think that's a huge problem with us. Americans, people who belong to the Anglo diaspora, whites in general, we view having a soul as being bad for the bottom line or being a political liability, because that's all we're capable of viewing our fellow man as, just a political unit, a political pawn, a financial pawn, a cog in some piece of industry. It's sad, it's upsetting, it is disturbing. And this is why I doubt the sincerity of American Christians, not in just how they contradict Scripture directly in the garbage they preach, the types of churches they go to, but in how they treat God. You talk to your average Republican voter, they don't know what's in the Bible. They treat God like he's some chess piece. They view the Bible as something just to boost voter turnout. They view it as a cog. So their lip service to it is just that. It's pandering, insincere pandering. And that's another problem we have. Complete insincerity. This is why people get angry with me. They call me like a Christ cuck, which Humanity3, the Facebook page Humanity3, said something great about people who use Christ cuck as an insult. They said it doesn't really hold up in roast court when you have an anime body pillow and you're messaging transsexuals on Grindr. Maybe that wasn't exactly the quote, but I'm going to read from Humanity 3's Facebook page, the greatest page of all time. Give them a like. I can rest you assured that AIDS is not a government conspiracy to get rid of gays. It's the result of barbaric, unnatural, dangerous sex. Okay, I found it. Here's what it says precisely. Calling someone a Christ cuck as an insult doesn't hold up in the roast court when you're jacking off to lolly porn and sexting traps on Grindr. Well, the reason they call people Christ cucks is that you correctly identify what they've turned into a god. Whether it's Trump or whether it's a cartoon frog or some other stupid meme, you say, like, you take this really seriously, and here's the evidence that you do, and they're like, well, you're a Christ cuck. They can't be honest with themselves. They can't. Somebody points out their insincerity to them, and humans, we need the truth. We have an inborn need to know what is true, what actually is. Humans are also very prideful. We are not humble at all. And by humility, I mean the ability to admit that you are wrong when you are wrong. So when you combine this need for the truth with our complete absence of humility, you get something very destructive. Humans are dangerously prideful. We rearrange reality to accommodate our lies. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned, maybe I'm not present-year enough, but seems like just telling the truth is easier. But no, we gotta invent gender reassignment surgery to accommodate some pervert's psychosis. So this was posted by Ricky Vaughn on Twitter, and I know I haven't said too many positive things about Donald Trump, but he shared a link that said... It says, Trump signs first ever internet anti-porn pledge. Clinton refuses. Now, we all know that the pornography industry is predicated on taking advantage of abuse victims. It's the only way the pornography industry exists. If you don't have any broken homes, broken families, broken individuals, you do not have what they call talent. They don't have a supply of fresh meat to put on camera doing unspeakable things. So in response, these idiots said, dumb move. Anything that would make both Mormons and Andrea Dworkin happy should be opposed. This is a huge turnoff. Most of it is fine, but enforcing obscenity laws is very questionable. Porn is degenerate, but then again, so are the feminists and churchianity allies who push pointless shit like this. What, protecting abuse victims is pointless? Again, this is how our fellow whitey treats his fellow man. He thinks that you should not be anti-pornography, even though the entire industry, it preys on vulnerable people. Apparently protecting emotionally and psychologically vulnerable people is dumb. Oh no, Trump's interfering with my cummies, man. That's dumb. So Ricky Vaughn on Twitter posts this tweet. It's a positive thing. He thinks it's a positive thing that Clinton signs an anti-porn pledge, and these followers, or people that saw his tweet, say, this is what the feminists want. Making my words more true than when I first said them, that anti-feminism in its present manifestation is nothing more than a sodomite Trojan horse. But I have a lot more to cover here. These were popular requests during my brief 1-week hiatus. It says, Mayor of Stockton, California, arrested for playing strip poker with teens and secretly recording it from the WashingtonPost.com. Anthony Silva, the mayor of Stockton, California, has a history of bizarre, outlandish, and questionable behavior. His own website states that he is a little rough around the edges. That may be an understatement. During a mayoral candidate debate hosted by Stockton's NAACP and Black Women Organized for Political Action in April, Silva, who is white, said he is the city's first black mayor. Is he white? I thought he was La Raza. Anthony Silva. I'm going to get another picture of him. I don't know. Yeah, I doubt this guy is full white, but, you know, he probably crosses the 50% threshold, so, you know what, we'll just go with it. He said, so Silva, who is white, said he was the city's first black mayor. The next day, he clarified his statement to CBS. I think I said, I'm not African American, but I'm pretty darn close. Quite frankly, I could be determined to be the first African American mayor of Stockton. In 2014, he was handcuffed after a fight broke out in a limousine. The fight caused $7,000 to $10,000 worth of damage to his car. Curtis Mitchell, who was arrested for the fight, said Silva inappropriately touched his fiancée. Silva denied the claim. The mayor was never arrested, but the limousine's drivers filed a civil lawsuit against him and the other passengers in May. In 2015, a gun that had belonged to him turned up as the weapon in the slaying of 13-year-old Rayshawn Harris, who was shot to death in his driveway in February of that year. It turned out that the .40 caliber semi-automatic pistol had been stolen from Silva's home during a burglary, but the mayor had not reported the gun missing until a month after Harris was killed, the Associated Press reported. All that could be written off, perhaps, as the erratic, questionable behavior in the life of an eccentric mayor. But there was no writing off what happened Thursday. Silva was charged with a felony of secretly recording confidential communications without consent and 3 misdemeanor charges: contributing to the delinquency of a minor, providing alcohol to people under 21, and child endangerment. Silva was arrested and, clad in a black t-shirt, shorts, white socks, sandals, and now handcuffs, guided into a police cruiser. He was released the same day after posting $20,000 bail. The allegations were a bit of a shocker. After all, he had served as the chief executive of the Boys and Girls Club of Stockton, president of the Stockton Unified Board of Education, and aquatic program director for the San Joaquin County Human Service Agency, where he helped kids in economically disadvantaged parts of Stockton get access to swimming lessons and pools, according to his website. He also coached high school water polo for several years. Finally, he operated the Silver Lake Camp, a camp for disadvantaged youth. But it was at this camp that police arrested Silva for providing alcohol to minors and proceeding to play a game of strip poker with several young people there. One was a 16-year-old boy. Police said he filmed the game against their will. And then from one aficionado of transgressions to another. City of Fairfax mayor arrested in meth for sex bust, police say. This is in Virginia. Mayor of the city of Fairfax, Virginia, has been arrested after he allegedly gave methamphetamine to an undercover detective in exchange for a sexual encounter, Fairfax County Police said. Richard Silverthorne, 50, was arrested Thursday at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Tyson's Corner. I ask that you allow the process to proceed before rushing to judgment, as tough as that may be, Silverthorne wrote on his Facebook page Friday. Silverthorne has appointed Councilman Jeff Greenfield, acting mayor, until further notice. Police in late July received a tip that Silverthorne may have been trading meth for sex on a website used to arrange casual sexual encounters between men. An undercover detective created a profile on the website, and Silverthorne contacted him within a few days, according to police. Silverthorne allegedly told the detective he could provide meth in exchange for sexual encounters. Police said the detective who agreed to meet with Silverthorne, who agreed to bring other men to the engagement, according to police. Police said Silverthorne brought meth to the Chainbridge Road Hotel on Thursday. He was arrested and charged with felony distribution of methamphetamine and misdemeanor possession of drug paraphernalia. What a job that must be. Yeah, that you have to pose as some homo looking for some meth for cummies. But we're not all like that. I mean, this guy who says he's gonna give us meth for sex and somehow he busts people all the time, that's not indicative of anything about our behavior. You're just being bigoted. Look, white people, I'm reciting right-wing talking points with cock in my mouth. I'm on your side. I do a lot for your movement. And we believe it. Proportional to our IQ, we are the stupidest people on the planet. We elect these people as politicians. We let them be Boy Scout leaders. You know, you name it, we let them do it. Because we want to show how cool we are and how okay we are with cardinal sin. Authorities say they don't know how long Silverthorne was on the website, which police did not identify. I know he had one other relationship on the website besides us. Captain Jack Harden with Fairfax County Police said during a news conference Friday. Police said Silverthorne also served as a substitute teacher. Of course, a sodomite would work as a public educator for Fairfax County Public Schools. A spokesman for the school district told NBC News that Silverthorne worked briefly as an FCPS substitute teacher starting in April 2016 and that he has been let go. Silverthorne's arrest comes amid a trying year for him. He lost his full-time civilian job, lost his home, and was diagnosed with cancer. For the wages of sin is blank. In May, he was re-elected to a third term as mayor after being elected to the position in 2012. Investigators also arrested Silverthorne's alleged suppliers, Juan Jose Fernandez, 34, and Costin Lee McLaughlin, 21. This guy's 21, he already looks like he's like 40. That's what being a sodomite meth head gets you. The wages of sin really is death. Fernandez was charged with felony distribution of methamphetamine, felony possession, and with the intent to distribute methamphetamine and misdemeanor possession of drug paraphernalia. McLaughlin was charged with felony distribution of methamphetamine, felony obstruction of justice, and misdemeanor possession of drug paraphernalia. Police said McLaughlin physically resisted arrest and a detective had to deploy his stun gun. There were no injuries. Silverthorne, Hernandez, and McLaughlin were taken to the Fairfax County Adult Detention Center for processing. Silverthorne was released, and Fernandez and McLaughlin were in jail as of Friday afternoon. This was last Friday, if I'm not mistaken. Not the one I'm recording on, because I am recording on Friday afternoon right now. There's no date on this. Oh, 5th of August, 2016, so it was last week. Silverthorne's attorney, Brian Drummond, said, "Given the fact that I haven't had the opportunity to sit down and speak with my client, I'll no comment at this time." The acting mayor declined to comment on the charges against Silverthorne. So, I mean, there you have it. They abuse their power in the military. They abuse their power from the head of the municipal government. They abuse their power as Supreme Court justices and other lesser judges. When are we going to say enough is enough? Never. Because we're just dead. The majority of people are dead inside. They don't care. They have no soul. They have no sense of right and wrong. Their sense of right and wrong is inverted if they do have some sort of a spark within them that tells them right and wrong. Even if they have that, it's all backwards. And it's all because we are dangerously prideful. We can't say our human solutions have brought us these problems, and more of our human flawed solutions, it'll just lead to the same place. But we're too prideful to say that. Dangerously prideful. And what is this? What is this collection of headlines I have here? Election 16 brings political passions to new heights. Voter stress spikes, headaches, drowsiness. Quick, find a scapegoat. Find somebody to blame. That'll make you feel better. Anti-Americanism surges in Turkey. Nudist craze sweeps London. Oh, of course. Who sent ISIS? God sent ISIS. Yeah, I don't understand why so many of these Middle Eastern locations are so hostile to the West. I mean, the West, they turn their military into the DMV. All of their combat is done from an air-conditioned room where some queer's at a joystick pushing buttons and blowing up some illiterate villagers. Yeah, I couldn't possibly see how killing people's families abroad fosters hostility amongst those populations. I just don't see how it is. I mean, they have a weird culture over there where they don't like it when you kill their women and children. I know, strange, right? What a bunch of backwards, crazy people who don't take too kindly to the American government staging a coup on their behalf to overthrow governments that the American government doesn't like. I know, it's a strange thing. Yeah, what's that? What goes around comes around. As you sow, so shall you reap. I haven't heard about any of that. Why take personal responsibility? Blaming people is so much easier. Blaming other people, anyway. There are a number of different things I'd like to address, namely some of these retarded comments I receive. I don't understand it. Maybe this is why people go crazy if they're like YouTube famous. They're just constantly looking at comment after comment after comment. And I see how it wears on some people because I don't understand how stupid some people can be. I just don't understand how you get to that point. Maybe on the next episode of Extra, I'll get into them, but yeah, it's like, don't talk. If you are stupid, don't talk. Because I know you aren't listening. Never mind. I'm not giving them any more attention right now. At least, not while I'm on the wrong side of the paywall. So we'll get into question and comments on r/CommonFilth, the official Common Filth subreddit. You can check it out. You can contribute. Please do. We start off with this. It says, you were asked about the amazing atheist last week. I just wanted to point out something you may not know. About 1 year ago, TJ was in an open relationship with his wife. They got separated when this fat sodomite started dating a female-to-male tranny. A female-to-male tranny named Kyle. This person was much younger and physically smaller than TJ and lived with, quote-unquote, his parents due to being obviously mentally ill. Now, according to TJ, TJ being the amazing atheist, he went over to his pre-op tranny female-to-male boyfriend, Kayla's house to meet his mom and stepdad. Kyle and his mom, Shannon, left to go get his stepdad, Rick, some beer when Rick pulls a gun on TJ and tells him he went on the internet and learned how fucked up TJ is and told TJ to fuck off or he'd shoot him. TJ promptly fucked off and went to cry on the internet about how bigoted this person's parents were. The parents took control of the situation and denied TJ any more meeting with their ill daughter. TJ later admitted to having multiple BDSM sessions at some greasy hotel. He was taking advantage of some shattered soul and molesting this person, a mentally ill person who thinks that she's a tranny. For more insight into this disgusting human being, this is what he said in response to the question, most deviant / out there sexual fantasy. And the amazing atheist responds with, being the main course at a big barbecue, being led around the party on a leash beforehand while the guests squeeze and abuse me and comment how they can't wait to see me over the flames like a luau pig. This is months, if not years, of being livestock that is routinely abused and dehumanized. The amazing atheist is bug chaser levels of depraved and has been admired by millions of young people listening to his words and taking his advice. Well, because they see a kindred spirit there. They find a brotherhood with that kind of depravity. A kind of depravity that can only be born out of isolation, out of having way too much free time and having no idea what to do with it. Somebody brought up a great point on the subreddit in another thread. Oh, that was the wrong button combination there. But it was a thread about a video of a guy vaping semen. And somebody said this is what happens when people have too much free time. It is true. The idle hands are a devil's plaything. God made man to work. God did not intend for us to just sit around and come up with our own crazy ideas of how things should be. And I gotta mention, Matt Forney did an episode on this, actually because of this comment that he left on this subreddit here, so go check out his latest episode of the Matt Forney Show, where I listened to about half of it last night before I went to bed, and it's so sick that the amazing atheist played the victim in all this when he is taking advantage, abusing, preying upon this mentally ill girl who is rightfully under the care of her mom and stepdad because she obviously cannot care for herself. I think she's diagnosed officially with some sort of mental illness. I think she was in a mental institution if I was listening to that podcast correctly. So there's a lot to this story that Matt Forney covers on his show. So that's episode 132 of his program, I believe. So go check that out if you want more detail than what this comment here provides. It's a great comment, and I hadn't known anything about this until Agent 11 here submitted this. So and he's like, "Oh, this is just drama, like you whipping and beating and abusing this mentally ill woman. That's just drama to you." and you think that's love, and that she's in a not loving home. They're trying to prevent something like this from happening. That's what they're doing. That's love. That man pulling a gun on you is more love than you could than you are capable of, TJ. That man in threatening your festering wound of a life, your virus, your disease of a life, was more love than you have ever achieved. And I'm about to hear it now. Who cares what the amazing atheist did to some mentally ill woman and her family? They consented, right? It's like consent is like some magic potion to the present Westerner. Like, oh, you want to eat me alive? Well, as long as everybody consents to it, I guess that's okay. Well, like, I guess you can't understand how people would be affected by that if you don't have a soul, and you can't empathize, and therefore you can't empathize with people who do have souls. You can't empathize with how that might affect them. More proof that we're a soulless people. By and large, 60% and growing, we're soulless. Which is why we have such a fixation on consent. We have no mind of our own, no soul of our own. Which is why our only sense of right and wrong comes from whether or not we're agreeing to something. And far too many people think that having no sense of shame, no boundaries, that's a good thing. Hola, CF, long-time listener, first-time commenter. I would just like to clarify a few things on China and the government of China. My point is to not refute your claims that white Western culture is superior to Chinese or that white people's moral values are not currently degenerating, but it is clear that the Chinese Communist Party is an evil entity that should not be promoted under any circumstances. The CCP promotes satanic and atheistic values antithetical to the Judeo-Christian ethic. The Chinese Communist Party is possibly the most evil and depraved government entity to ever exist. Tens of millions murdered or starved, the systematic destruction of religion and culture, including the annihilation of Buddhist, Taoist, Confucian temples, the Cultural Revolution between 66 and 67 is unlike anything this world has ever seen. Mass brainwashing wholly degenerated the traditional values of the Chinese populace. House Christians are still persecuted in China. Churches have been destroyed in order to have a church. It has to, I thought that was a comma. In order to have a church, it has to be essentially infiltrated by a Communist Party official, otherwise it's not legit in the eyes of the regime. They're treated as political prisoners and killed, tortured, etc., not to mention adherents of Falun Gong, Tibetan Buddhists, people whose land was stolen by the government, etc. There's a system of hospitals used to harvest political prisoners' organ for profit. All of this stuff I was vaguely aware of. I heard some mumblings about human factory farms for the sake of organ harvesting in China. So it's good to know the source of these atrocities. Chinese people are different. They are more introverted and are not privy to outwardly showing emotions or behaviors. Perhaps there's a high frequency of homosexuality, but they don't outwardly show it. Secondly, they are more prone to malice, stealing, lying, and mistreating others. I believe this has to do with the introverted and often jealous nature of the majority of Chinese people. People often treat others like human trash, especially CCP officials, merely out of spite and jealousy. Anyway, CF, keep up the good work and appreciate what you are doing. Well, yeah, I thought that religion was responsible for all of these evils. You're telling me that communism, atheistic communism, is doing all these things? That's just religious nut propaganda. That's another one I get a lot of the time from passerby, internet passerby. This guy's just a religious nut. To which I say, how so? How? There's a lot of people who are religious nuts, except they're nuts about something you wouldn't deem a religion. A lot of people are very good at hiding what they worship when it's hidden in plain sight. You people don't know. You think just religion is like books and Bibles and praying, and you don't realize that it's so much more than that. Same people who think that culture is just food and music and dancing. But you have to understand, when I'm using China as an example of something, I'm using them as an example of what they don't do. They don't export soul-destroying propaganda. In fact, they recently outlawed the portrayal of sodomy on television. Chinese families, your average Chinese family, unlike your average Western family, won't take too kindly to their sons telling them that they have the desire to feed their jizz to other males. Once you're communist, you have nowhere to go but up. That is the worst system of human organization that exists. And combine that with the fact that China has a very quickly growing Christian population, you have a people who are ascending, not descending, unlike some other regions of the earth. What's the deal with our natural aristocracy and ukuleles? Well, they're cheap, pretty easy to learn, and yeah, it's just a low barrier to entry. Hi, CF. I discovered your Vaporwave album just the other day and I really enjoyed it. Do you have any plans to make more Vaporwave in the future? No, not really. The Beijing to Mogadishu thing was the last thing I did. I just don't have the motivation to do music anymore, to be honest with you. Even if it is just remixed recordings, pre-existing recordings. Some lesbian on my normie book commented on this, so it ended up on my feed. It's a remote-controlled butt plug that can be activated by phone from the other side of the globe. Still no good app for monitoring pacemakers via phone to keep normal people alive. At least we have our priorities straight. Oh yeah, anal is a very important priority. Aren't you glad that in the West you can do butt stuff? You can do butt stuff without consequence? Wow, I love living in the West. We really need to preserve it against other people who might have a legitimate grievance against us. By the way, this was another popular request over these last 2 weeks. ISIS calls gay U.S. Army Secretary an effeminate sodomite. Well, are they wrong? Okay. You should review this. It's Lacey Green's Draw My Life, and you can see how she turned into the cum dump she is today. It's pretty sad, to be honest. Please review this. It should be documented how an innocent child turned into this thing, kind of like Chris Chan. Well, let me guess, she got used sexually by some jerk. Some jerk boy who's like, yeah, whatever, babe, and it got her all buzzing down there. And then it was all downhill from there because she felt betrayed, and the only way that she thinks she can make herself feel better is by doing the same thing with different people, even though it's the same result. I want to know what kind of guy that would put a ring on somebody like Lacey Green. I would like to meet that person and give them a good talking to. You play Pokemon Go, dude? I installed it the first day it came out. I caught like 3 Pokemon. No, I caught 2. That was including my starter. And then I uninstalled it because if I'm out and about somewhere, I want to be there. I don't want to be in augmented reality. I don't want to be there. And it's like, if I want to just wander around catching crappy Pokemon, I'll boot up an emulator and do that. And do it more efficiently. Buenos dias, CF. I got a bit of a non-question for you today, so strap in. As you pointed out in the past, encouraging folks to get away from the computer screen and actually interact face-to-face is an often undervalued piece of advice. It's the one constant bit of criticism that can be applied to any community operating primarily online, regardless of the values they espouse. In spite of this, most folks who have strayed from the plethora of self-destructive paths, social justice, esoteric Trumpism, etc., that was my censoring of that term, only did so with what they learned over the net. Very rarely does anyone seem to reach the proverbial truth without the aid of some form's denizens or something to that effect, truth being in quotations. Really, it wasn't until I witnessed the mind-boggling reactions to Omar's public service efforts that I began to form any tangible hardline opposition of faggotry. I mean, it had always been there to some extent, but observing the hypocrisy and degeneracy swell up firsthand was quite an eye-opening experience. And therein lies my point of contention. This newfound perspective I had gained occurred in a vacuum, away from any of the conflict and strife of real life. It's pretty easy to establish clear convictions and value when there's no one in the room to contest to them. I'd have preferred to reach this conclusion gradually, perhaps with some discussions between peers and family. The internet seems to be acting as a surrogate for any guiding presence, which is concerning regardless of whether or not the knowledge you gain is valuable. This leaves us with a bit of a paradox, where those who criticize over-reliance on the internet would have never even had the mindset to reach that opinion without it in the first place. Sounds kind of stupid, but I think it's worth considering. With all that said, do you think the conventional wisdom of get the fuck outside should acknowledge some of the benefits the internet brings, or should the fact that those of this generation aren't learning the truth from a parent or priest, but some gutter dredge on pull, acts as further evidence of our collective decline? I'd lean towards the latter. Alright, thanks for indulging me. Godspeed, CF, you spick bastard. Viva la raza! Yo soy, I don't know any more Mexican words. Well, the conclusion you came to, it didn't need to come from having face-to-face interactions with people. That piece of advice I give is just so that you don't lose sight. You have some perspective on things and just to maintain some balance. You know, you need a little bit of innocuous conversation in your life. And how you arrived at the conclusion you arrived at is how I've arrived at most of my conclusions, in silent reflection. The purpose of interacting with people, doing social things, is to maintain balance, so you don't go crazy. But, you can't do that all the time, or else you'll invite a sort of madness of in its own respect. So there's nothing wrong with coming to conclusions after you have conversations, after certain events happen, after you observe the reaction to certain events. Nothing wrong with that. If we based our knowledge of the world on our interactions with each other, we wouldn't know about 99% of the insanity that takes place. So the internet is equal parts solution, equal parts problem. It is both a great tool for compiling all of these insane reprobates out there, and it's also useful for creating them. So... But, you gotta take the good with the bad. I'm so sick of people who are just like, I don't want to know anything bad about anything. Sick of obliviousness. Sick of people who are just like, they're not like that. Whoever they might be. I'm sure you know who they are. Hey CF, long-time listener here. First of all, thank you for being a voice of Christian reason, and please keep making videos until he commands you otherwise. If I remember correctly, you don't like the idea of unified Christianity, and I agree on that too. A few days ago, I had a talk with some Orthodox priest and got some knowledge on how corrupt Orthodox Church has turned too. Filled with the sin of greed, with priests taking large amounts of money to do some service outside the church, and even worse, never appear on the church, except the day they share the donation box to take their share of the money. You see now the Orthodox Church is filled with saints and Mary worshippers. I find it funny and tragic at the same time that we whites are truly descendants of Japheth's sons. We literally turn everything into an idol to worship, from trees to animals and from humans to recently frogs from children's books. And it's always the same result when you try to confront the stupidity of these people. Oh yeah, I know all about it. They hide behind irony to introduce the absurdity. Like, look, I think it's a joke too, haha. And then when you call them out on it, you say you don't treat it like a joke, they call you autistic because you know them better than they know themselves. Anyway, I officially started going to the local Orthodox church since April. The priest there is a kind and humble old man, and I also decided to wear the robe and become a priest. I know I will further be disgusted by the kind of people I will meet, but hard times breed hard people. Thank you for reading that. It was something that I wanted to share some time ago. Also, how do you feel about the idea of making you the Pope of internet Christians and launch the holy war against Kek worshippers? Well, you gotta understand they're a very small number of people, and just substitute Kek with anything else, and you'll just have a paganism of another stripe. Too many of us take seriously what is only worth casual consideration. And as for being the internet's Pope, I don't want that. It's strange. I don't feel like that much of a leader. I sit at my microphone, my computer's here. One's recording, I'm reading off of the other. And, I do what I do. And, if I'm right, I'm right. I'm not a prophet. I'm not sent. I'm not, I don't have God literally speaking to me where I hear voices. I'm not that special. But what I say here resonates with a decent number of people. And they hear what I say. They wish our leaders would say what I say and put these words into some sort of action. Just them saying what I would say or something similar to what I would say I think would do a lot. That would be something. That's what annoys me about people who say you don't do anything. Yet they'll turn around and say that some pervert who runs an obscure website does a lot for, whatever retarded movement that's here today, gone tomorrow. Speaking the truth goes a long way. And if that truth is backed by some sort of power, it goes even further. But very rarely will you find anybody in power who speaks the truth. But best of luck to you. I hope the entering the priesthood works out for you. That's really good. Praise insert totally ironic pagan meme. Hey CF, thanks for the response to last week's question. My question for this week would be, do you have any vices and thoughts you struggle with, and if so, how do you deal with them? I know that I won't be able to completely undo the damage society has done to my morality and spirituality in under a year, but I struggle with coming to the Lord's side. Whenever I try to quell them, I usually find myself unable to keep them at bay for long, and end up hating and damning myself to hell after giving in. I feel distant from God, and it is no doubt due to my spirituality or lack thereof. I know without him I'm lost, but the state of the world nearly tips me to the edge of despair, and I find it hard to feel the Lord's presence whenever I try to pray, something which feels incredibly alien to me, making me feel like my efforts are futile. Obviously, though, I keep trying because I know that years of indoctrination isn't going to magically go away, especially in the duration of a few months. I've always viewed myself as pretty much an object with no feelings and whose goal mainly is to observe the world and people around me. Like I was reading a story or watching a film, only every now and then I made a cameo as a minor character who would interact with the main and supporting characters. With Christ, I can close my eyes and escape my solipsism and find a higher purpose and meaning, something to work and improve my being. Yes, high IQ doesn't solve all problems after all, huh, race worshippers? Anyway, once I find a stable career and leave my parents' home, I will probably get more involved with the faith, since I will have more time and resources available to get closer to God, including baptism. Back to vices, the main one I have issue with is wrath. I can get past my envy, my lust, my sloth, but with wrath it is the sin that usually leads me astray and end up with a burning rage inside. And though godless they may be, I know it is worse maintaining this dark, hateful, and self-hating feeling inside me. My resentment, though, is mostly at Western society and the higher-ups in our decadent system, who have been warping people, including my parents, into becoming zombie lesbians, and made morally sound people like my grandparents feel they had to become accepting to my parents and many other lifeless lifestyles, which only hurt the family and makes life a series of meaningless events and interactions. Oh, and to be clear, they're both a mixed race of native Maori and European white. Apparently my father is an American Jew, although my mother never talked much of him. All I know of his involvement with me was that my mother had promiscuous sex with him, probably accidentally got pregnant, but for whatever reason decided to have me. And once born, he left to continue being a musician who actually has a Wikipedia page here. Wow. That's upsetting. Anyway, I'll leave it there for now, save you become an old man reading every single thought and idea I type down. TLDR, finding it hard to feel connected to God and overcoming sin, although I still follow his guidelines as best I can. Since you were away, may I as well add something else. My other question would be, have you dealt with any family members or friends who have become lost from the path? If so, how did you deal with it? Pretty much everyone around me are all broken, either mentally or spiritually, to the point I can't see them ever turning to Christ, but I still see hope that I may be able to save the people I truly consider friends from evil due to how they talk about homosexuality and other deviance is wrong and unnatural. Should I try to lead them to the path of God, or is naivety at best? If I can't save myself, I want to at least save one soul from damnation. Hope you're feeling better this week, and may the Lord bless you and keep you. P.S. It is the hours of genuine African-American ethnicity. Please proceed to aggressively click the upvote button if you are awake. Thanks for writing all of that. Thank you for sharing your experiences, and thank you for your honesty. It is refreshing to see sincere people contributing to what I do here. I've dealt with rage and wrath for a long time, and I used to get very angry very easily, and when I would get really angry, it would last for days and weeks, and now now when it happens, it's either hours or even minutes. I know the feeling. I know it too well, but you make yourself feel better, I think, by realizing that they're not on your side and they never were. So them acting in a way that is against you, acting in a way that causes you rage, that causes you to feel wrath, that's par for the course. It's to be expected. It is a predictable behavior. The world does something wrong and it causes you to be upset. And you realize that the only way that you can change it is by changing how you react to things. By changing your rage and wrath into disappointment. It's difficult to put into words how this happens, but the best word I can use to describe it is patience. As years go by, as time marches on, if you are doing the right things for the right reasons, you're treating yourself, your soul, in the way it should be treated, as commanded by God. You're following all the rules. You repent when you do wrong. As you keep doing this, you will feel less rage, you will feel less wrath. And you have to be patient with yourself. It's like when you're young, when you're small, and you're growing quicker than you ever will in any other time in your life. And you don't notice it. You're gaining weight, you're growing taller as you get closer and closer to puberty. You don't notice that. It's quick, but it's also gradual. Living day to day, if you are living the right way, you won't notice yourself growing stronger in areas that you are weak. Because, from one day to the next, there might not be any change, but from 1 year to the next, if you are doing it right, if your soul isn't locked away from the light of God, you will see that year over year difference. It might not change in the way you want it to change or improve in the way you want it to improve, rather, but it will. It might not go as quickly as you want, but it will. The key is patience. On the path that led me to here, broadcasting my voice for thousands of people every week, it was difficult. Documenting what I document, looking at what I look at, thinking about, what is in front of me, what I put in front of myself, what I read in the news, what I see from the average person, the horrible things the average person believes, learning how naive people are when you contrast it with what's actually out there, how people actually behave, and the type of behaviors they're defending is infuriating. And it would last, like I said, for weeks, months. Very unhealthy. But I got to the point where knowing the truth was enough. I mean, it isn't always enough, and that's a fault on my behalf. But you knowing the truth, you knowing why things are wrong, why the path that people walk, why it's wrong, that'll do a lot for you. It's nice to convince others that certain things are wrong that we in our culture accept. But some people don't want to be right. Like I said, humans are dangerously prideful. And they don't like to admit that when they're wrong. Myself included, yourself included. I would say that most people don't want to know the truth. Some people, but don't let it get you down. And I know that's trite and dismissive, but patience. You got to give yourself patience. And your wrath and rage, you'll feel it less. You will grow, like I said, you will grow strong in areas that in which you are weak. You won't notice it day over day, but it'll happen. When dealing with the issue of friends and family who are on the wrong path, what can you tell them other than, that's wrong? You shouldn't be doing that. They're going to listen or they're not. And speaking of most people need to fall flat on their faces and make horrible decisions for themselves to understand why the decisions they make are wrong. It's not enough to be told, hey, that's bad. Because again, we're full of hubris. We're blinded by our own hubris and fleeting pleasure. It's good to let them know that they're doing wrong, but don't let them drag you down with them. That's what you need to avoid. So that's something else you got to be careful of. Don't allow yourself to get caught up in whatever nonsense they're involving themselves in. Minimize your exposure to it and trust that the just thing will happen to them, and hopefully God shows them some mercy. So Dravo CF, longtime listener and commenter. I have plans to move back to Serbia, Greece, or Russia if Hillary, the church, should pay tax. Clinton gets elected, seeing as they're much more religious in Eastern Europe. This is the best place to go if you want to escape the POZ, that will be 10 times worse under Clinton. My question is, would you say I should stay in the shithole country and try my best to change it? Or should I skip from Rome to Byzantium, as the saying goes? I'm not sure, and your opinion on this would be appreciated. Serbia, Greece, and Russia are pretty specific, so I'm guessing you have cultural ties to those places, and in that case, fine. I wouldn't recommend Greece, though. Greece might as well be a third world nation. Same could be said for Serbia or Russia, but Russia seems to be ascending to a better place. So, look, if you have cultural ties to these locations, I say go for it if you really think America's going to become that bad. But I think the opposite's going to happen, to be honest, if Hillary gets elected. Too much success and too few setbacks. It makes people lazy. I think the opposite is going to happen if Hillary Clinton gets elected, to be honest with you. I think our cultural gatekeepers are going to get lazy. But I think that if Trump gets elected, they're going to, the other side's going to press the panic button and shut everything down. shut all dissenting opinion down. But if Clinton gets elected, they can be soothed by the idea that they're still in charge, and they'll get lazy, and an even bigger backlash can develop under their lazy eyes. Because under a Trump presidency, whatever he may be, and I don't think he's going to be nearly what they think he's going to be. I don't think he's going to be anything that either side thinks he's going to be. I just think he's pretty clueless when it comes to certain aspects of the culture that need to be removed. But regardless of whatever Trump actually is, if he gets the presidency, they have a point of resistance to point to and say, hey, look, we're not in charge anymore. Even though it's not really true, because he represents no threat to cultural HIV. None at all in my estimation. But that's what they think. That's their perception of it, so they're going to act on that perception. They're going to double down on the bigot witch hunt. They will double the amount of ideas and words that are considered hate speech. The truth is hate speech. Hello, Common Filth. I've listened to all your podcasts, and I also bought the extra ones from Man Camp. Thank you. I don't think you've been asked this question before. What do you think of Christian identity? More exactly, did you ever read this site? Well, I'm about to. A commentary on the epistles of Paul is now underway at Christogenia.org. This lengthy and in-depth series reveals the true Paul as an apostle of God, a prophet in his own right, and the first teacher of what we call Christian identity. The word identity is ruined. Every time I hear identity, I think of some idiot who doesn't know who they are. So they take the most superficial thing about themselves and say, that's who I am. And then they adopt this identity without having any idea what it actually is. Which is when you get questions like, I like this thing. Does that make me less white? My nipples are a shade pinker than my girlfriend's. Am I a race mixer? If fixation on identity leads you to have sinful reprobates in your midst, you allow them because they fulfill that one thing. Because that's what culture is just that one thing. There are more important issues, Fuck off. Anybody who says that is... Okay, great. There are more important issues. Well, let us fixate on the less important ones, and don't you fucking dare undermine our efforts in fixing the lesser problems. That's all they're talking about when people talk about lesser issues in comparison to what they think is most important. All they're saying is that we're going to undermine your efforts in solving these issues, and yeah, fuck. Anything blank identity, this identity. I haven't even read this yet, but yeah, what is Christian identity? Christian identity, also sometimes called Israel identity, is the only true conservative Christianity. It is true because it seeks to maintain the understanding in accordance with Scripture that the New Covenant was made only with those same people with whom the Old Covenant was made, the house of Israel and the house of Judah. These Israelite people are traceable through time to the Celtic and Germanic tribes of today. None of these people are Jews. The Jews are descended from a mere remnant of the old kingdom of Judah, along with the assorted Edomite and other Arabs who were mixed into the Roman province of Judea during the Hellenic period. There are, at last count, at least 16 detailed essays on this website which demonstrate this, which are replete with biblical, archaeological, and historical citations. Christian identity is the belief that the covenants of God are real and consistent. Wait, that first part, these Israelite people are traceable through time to the Celtic and Germanic tribes. Look, that's a little too we was Jews, we was Israelites. It's a little too close to that for me. Hey, Common Filth, I want to say first off that I love your work and appreciate all the effort you make to be a voice of reason on the insanity known as the internet. I've recently met a woman that I've gotten into a serious relationship with. I'm a young 20-year-old man and she's 6 years older than me, which would make her my age. She suffers from PTSD and is a rape survivor who has to take medication and visit a therapist every month. She's had a rough start in life, not helped by issues stemming from child abuse at a young age. Despite this, she seems well-adjusted in life. No, she's not. It's good that she's taking steps to get herself on the straight and narrow, but no, she's not well adjusted. If she has to take medication and visit a therapist, she's not well adjusted. And I'm not saying this is through any fault of her own, but it's just not happening right now. She isn't a typical Tumblrista. She doesn't have dyed hair, piercings, tattoos, or even a Tumblr account. I love her and I hope to marry her someday to keep her happy for the rest of her life. My problem is that she's experimented with soft drugs in the past, marijuana and psychedelics, something that I heavily condemn. She's experimented with her previous boyfriend, who was a shithead heroin addict who killed her pets while high off cocaine. She seems receptive to my worldview and beliefs and is willing to accept decency into her life. She's promised me to never do drugs again. She said the only reason she tried them were because they were around her, but I have a hard time forgiving her for her past actions. The thought of her being addicted to drugs and destroying her own life keep me awake at night. We're both serious and committed about this relationship, but I think too much about her doing drugs and getting hooked again, and it makes me view her negatively. What should I do? I just want to make her happy. This rubs me the wrong way for a number of different reasons. Namely that she is 26 and you are 20. She's very worldly. She has a lot of knowledge in the ways of the world, and it seems to me that she's taking advantage of your relative ignorance. There's no such thing as a 26-year-old woman that prefers 20-year-olds. They want somebody who's a little bit established, who has something going for them, who's achieved something in life. Now, I'm not saying this to denigrate you. No, nothing like that. You've barely started life. So this is not an attack against you or your achievements. No. What I'm saying is this. A woman that age is looking for, if she has, her mind together and is like, I should stop sleeping with dozens of people every year or every month, whatever it may be. I should find somebody who has something to offer. And usually that's somebody older than her. Who's like somebody who's like 30, 31, 32, 33 and up. The problem is with a woman like that, with her baggage, a man that has something to offer isn't going to lose it to some chick with bad taste in men, which she has had in the past. Again, not an attack against you, but look, she's a drug addict. She's been raped. Okay, that's no fault of her own. But she said she's done marijuana and psychedelics, had a heroin junkie boyfriend, heroin and cocaine junkie boyfriend. This girl doesn't make good life decisions. And men who are older, or even of her age, they understand the implications of her former life, if that's what it even is. And they're not going to have that. They're like, no, I have a lot to lose and I'm not going to lose it to this. I'm not going to lose it to a woman like this when the warning signs are clear. Now, this is not to say that people cannot improve, but you know what? It can't happen under the watch of a 20-year-old guy. I'm sorry to say that. It's not going to happen. She's taking advantage of your naivety. And this reply here that was left, it said, if you doubt her, you shouldn't be around her, much less dating, much less considering marriage. Also, warning bells are going off at earth-shaking volumes just reading that background information. Simply being around drugs doesn't excuse taking them. Absolutely. And then the comment, the reply you had also says, what tells us not to do bad things? Our moral compass, which this woman has, she doesn't know how to use it up until the point where it's broken. Like, that's what I had. Look, I had roommates. Ones that smoked marijuana, ones that behaved in strange ways. Once they smoked marijuana, they'd invite their friends over, smoke marijuana. Guess what I never did? I never joined in. I was like, no, I don't want that. And another thing you need to know about junkies and people with PTSD and people that go to therapists and take medications, they are notorious for relapsing. And look, your age is only a part of the issue here. What I'm saying here is that as you get older, you get insight into certain personality types that you don't have at previous stages of your life. And at 20 years old, it's very difficult to have that insight. All right, so this is why you listen to others. But the age discrepancy here combined with all of her dysfunction, warning bells are going off at earth-shaking volumes indeed. Hello, CF. You spoke briefly about China having been immunized from institutional degeneracy. Did you know about China's one-child policy? Yes. This has resulted in millions of children being murdered by the Chinese Communist Party. Well, I know all about the evils of communism. Or baby girls being abandoned because they were deaf or physically deformed, and from time to time God-fearing Chinese Christians would rescue the abandoned ones. They're also a superstitious people still concerned over depictions of skeletons and other unlucky things. The Christians in China surprisingly find themselves in situations not that different from the times of the apostles. People are still concerned about eating food offered to idols and whether or not it was right for a Christian healer to charge their patients. And despite this, they're still not afraid to stand up to the most deleterious of spiritual diseases, which is sodomy. Yes, murder is horrible. Infanticide, horrible. Horrors that many Chinese people know firsthand. Which is why I don't see too many slut walks happening in China where Chinese women are holding up signs that say abortion on demand without apology. That's what you see in the West. I don't see too much of that coming out of China. It's over here in America, it's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. Over in the West, America, Europe, etc. Over in China, it's probably in the dozens. You don't see organized action being taken against those evil people who don't want kids to be murdered in the womb. I'm not kidding you. Maybe you've seen these pictures before. Pictures of girls who are holding up signs that say abortion on demand and without apology. I wish that was just some strange creative thing I just thought of, but no, my imagination's not that good. Shalom, fellow chosen one. What do you guys think about crucifixes for men? I've always liked the idea of wearing a cross as a reminder of my faith, specifically a Celtic cross or a Chi-Rho. Is that right? For my heritage and my fetish for Rome / the Byzantine Empire. Respectively, I'd probably wear it under my shirt, but I can't shake the feeling that a necklace is just gay. Well, if that's what your instinct tells you, then fine. I've never been bothered by seeing men wear crucifix necklaces, but, you know, if you have that opinion about it, then, I can't find any fault with that. Blessings of the 9 divines upon you, CF, don't let the daedra bite. It's the usual Serb calling from the land of good food, shit, internet, and golden dawns. Greece. Wait, didn't we have was that you? Hold on. No, it's somebody different, unless you're floating between usernames. There are a lot of Greeks in Serbia, and Serbians in Greece. I didn't know that. Oh, wait, are they do they border each other? My geography's not that good. You know, I'm not going to look up a map right now, but good to know. Interesting. I feel like I'm cheating since I'm writing this without having listened to the 100th episode, but I can't keep a steady internet for longer than 5 minutes, let alone 2 hours. Seriously, Greece, fix your shit. Then I didn't read this comment before I started recording, and I called Greece a third world nation, so I think that was accurate. It's a good guess on my behalf. I've come for 2 things. First one is simple. Unless the girl you like is religious, not spiritual, stop liking her. If you're alone, it's not because God is punishing you, rather protecting you from vapid sluts of the modern age. I unfortunately speak from experience, and I would hope that everybody's listening. I hope that everybody's listening because that's good advice. Next thing might be a bit long but interesting. You know all those would you rather and what would you questions? Well, it's time I step up the game. Take a comfortable seat because you will need to immerse yourself into this one. Okay. You receive a letter one day informing you that you're the only eligible heir to a small kingdom of 12 million stationed on an imaginary archipelago, which lies directly midway from Chile to New Zealand. The late ruler happened to be your long-forgotten relative 7 times removed something, I don't know. You essentially share the same 16 times great-grandmother. Doesn't matter. He had no sons or daughters because he was a natural aristocrat, and the cause of his death is syphilis. You can choose to deny the title, but you will never be able to contest the throne again. If you accept, however, you arrive to the string of tropical islands with water crystal clear and the sun just right. Upon traveling by taxi to your palace through the capital, you spot a country seemingly happy, but you notice a lack of churches and a very worrying amount of brothels and bars as well as hotels. The palace you will be residing in is as big as a cathedral. Walls are made out of marble, and every window is decorated by vitrage depicting mostly hedonistic life. At your office, you are asked to appoint your cabinet, marshal, master of coin, master of cultures. You notice there are no religious leaders whatsoever. The marshal informs you of your 150,000 strong army, of which 3,000 of your most devoted listeners will make up a regiment of the Loyal Honor Guard. The master of coin informs you your current budget is $30 million, a steady income of $2.5 million per year, from mostly tourism, deep water gold mining, and pearl collecting. The Minister of Cultures is a natural aristocrat who proudly brags about the 65% atheist populace. Not 85, that'd be a lot. A 90% college graduation rate and an abundance of female professors. He also informs you that their literacy of the people is 85% and the two official languages are English and Swedish. Everyone has cable internet, which effectively drains the income of $9 million. The only national holidays are the Independence Day of 20th of April, 420, New Year's, and a week-long Mother's Holiday. Prostitution and drugs are legalized. The taxes for distributing and providing both bring up an income of $800,000. The Air Force is strong and you have one nuke. Do you bestow the Lord's wrath upon Sodom and Gomorrah incarnate, or do you attempt to save the 35% of religious population? You can answer this in one of your following episodes. Best take time and think. That's actually a good question, because my answer would be there, and this reflects something I read in Genesis, like right before the chapter we did a Bible study on in episode 100. Abraham asks God, like, will you save these people? And basically he's saying, like, okay, if there's 50 people, 50 righteous people in Sodom, will you spare it? And God says, yes, I'll spare it. And then Abraham talks him all the way down to 10, and then it stops because he gets to the point there. The point being is that if they're just a couple of righteous people, those righteous people are worth preserving. Now, whether they're delivered from a place about to receive God's wrath, or they stay there and God spares the whole place for the sake of them, that's the question, what's going to happen there. But 35% is still a lot of people, so to use the country's largesse to subsidize the efforts of the 35% to remove in whatever way they see fit the 65%. That's what I would do. Hey, CF, what do you think of genetically modified foods and how it affects the common people? Also, what's your favorite vaporwave album? I like all of Macross's stuff. I really enjoy that work. And as for genetically modified foods, it's not something I've looked into, and I don't know if there is a whole lot of research on the subject right now, given how recent genetically modified organisms have been introduced into our food chain, our food supply. So I reserve judgment on that one. Hey, CF, thanks for answering my silly Chinese cartoon question. You got me on the dismal life situation stuff. Anyway, I wanted to comment on the scriptural knowledge of American Christians. I have the impression that American Christians have a far better knowledge of and learning of scripture than others. I base this on personal experience with them online and in person. Christians who aren't priests or clergy around my area, Eastern shithole, don't seem to have the same learning of the Bible as they do. Do you also have this impression? I don't, actually, because American Christianity seems to, like Donald Trump said, we're going to say Merry Christmas. That's the biggest problem. So I think that the spiritual depth of the American soul is a lot different than what your impression of it may be. And, maybe you've got lucky in meeting the people that you have and talking to the people that you have, and certainly they're an asset, but the impression I get is, it's not that great of the average American Christian, unfortunately. It's just a lot of them aren't really that willing to talk about matters of actual gravity. And I can't blame them. Most people aren't equipped to deal with what they deem negative, even though I don't think that the truth is negative. What you're telling the truth about might be negative, but the fact that you're telling the truth, I think, should be taken as a positive. So, hey CF, how are you today? Well, I hope you're not too happy, because this will make it worse. You haven't spotlighted any black degeneracy in a while, so have fun reading, my dude. Well, first of all, it's depravity, not degeneracy, because there's no such thing as African civilization. They do not exist in a higher place to degenerate from. So it says, this is from The Guardian, it says, revel in your faggotry. This was a commandment given to us at the beginning of the Chrysalis, or Gathering of Queer People of Color, an event taking place last week in the Redwoods of Mendocino County, about 100 miles north of San Francisco. The weekend had some ground rules. No white or straight people were allowed to watch us partying, dancing, or doing drag. We would be, if only briefly, entirely free from the white heterosexual gaze, a new experience for the many of the 50 participants. So we're talking about a matter of 50, compared to the Pride Parade, which is millions. Millions upon millions nationwide. Look, I don't know how many times I'm going to have to repeat this. You have an entire continent full of African heads of state. Or warlords, if you'd prefer to call them that. Doesn't matter. There's something that they're not doing that Western governments are. Well, first of all, African heads of state, most of them probably aren't elected democratically. I mean, they might give off the pretense like, ooga booga, look, we have the white man government. Which doesn't sound too much different from Western democracies, but set that aside for a moment. You have democratically elected leaders of Western governments spending millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to promote sodomy. You have David Cameron, that retard, Prime Minister of England, or is it the UK? Who cares? Regardless, he's still a head of state. He's saying, like, I want to export gay marriage worldwide. Yeah, Barack Hussein Obama, who is half Irish, or no, he's half white with Irish heritage, and Ireland is the only nation which has installed sodomitic marriage as the law of the land democratically. So you have the long-legged Mac Daddy Barack Hussein Obama spending millions of dollars promoting gay rights in Mother Africa. Again, I will read from the article in the New York Times back in December 2015. Since 2012, United States officials said the American government has spent more than $41 million specifically to promote gay rights globally, along with a portion of $700 million earmarked for marginalized groups to support gay communities and causes. $700 million. 41 million of which is specifically designated to promote gay rights. How much of that is non-specifically designated to promote it? But regardless, 6.6 million of the 41 million was spent on sub-Saharan Africa. So this money spent by a government headed by a mulatto who's pure African on one side and has some Irish on the other. The homophile Irish, who through democratic means chose to make sodomy the law of the land. And you're going to tell me that 54% to 60% of white people aren't sodomites? I'm not that stupid. You're not that stupid. Set aside your pride. I'm right. White nations like England, they elect leaders who create gay rights legislation, hate crime legislation, hate speech legislation under which sodomites are protected. And they enforce this hate speech code. People are arrested for making hate tweets. Oh, that's not banter. You gotta go to jail, mate. So white nations, if they don't take it upon themselves, elect leaders who protect the interests of sodomites, and they don't have a problem with that. Whereas in Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation, the final passage of the 2014 law against homosexuality, which makes same-sex relationships punishable by 14 years in prison and makes it a crime to organize or participate in any type of gay meeting, is widely regarded by both supporters and opponents of gay rights as a reaction to American pressure on Nigeria and other African nations to embrace gay rights. If Africa is more correct than you on any issue, you have a severe problem. And I like how this New York Times article tries to pass the blame of homophobia off to white people. Anti-gay sentiments are widespread across Africa. Same-sex relations remain illegal in most nations, the legacy of colonial laws that had been largely forgotten until the West pushed to repeal them in recent years. Well, if that's true, they've kept the good parts of it. And good on them for separating the good from the bad. How is it that a bunch of 75, 80 IQ tribal people recognize the evil of sodomy, but smart European 105 IQ people don't? How many European nations outlaw sodomy? I'd be very curious to know. What percentage of European people recognize this for the evil that it is? Maybe it's like 35%, like that other situation, that hypothetical situation that was put before me. From every conceivable angle, there is no better friend to the sodomite than the white man. And that is a huge problem that needs solving. Were those video games and movies I liked as a teen really satanic, or was that just my mom saying mom things? A little bit of both. You'd have to take it on a case-by-case basis. Look at the specific video games and movies you were watching as a teenager, and use your better judgment. You have better judgment now than you did back then. You know what to look for. And just remember, what you put in doesn't defile you. What goes into a man does not defile him, but what comes out of him from his own heart. So you can go look back at that stuff, and you'll be fine because you'll know what to look for. And if there's nothing satanic that you can find, well, maybe your mom was just overreacting, but maybe you'll find something that makes you think, oh, mom was right. So what else? Well, there's a good comment. That was a good reply left to your comment. The things you take in can affect you in ways you really don't notice. I don't think people who make those video games and movies have a giant satanic ritual to ensure Satan destroys your life. Satan doesn't need that. Those people are people most likely live rotten lives themselves, and that's enough dedication to Satan that they would put their filth into an easily distributed means of mass consumption. So many people will consume their filth through their eyes and ears and be wounded at some level. Your mom can't articulate it and finds it important to communicate it to you if she really loves you. What kind of a mother would want their child to go to hell or live through it? But if you are now a grown man, live a clean and upright life, stay clear from danger if you can't fight it, and be charitable by telling others what is dangerous. So good advice. But yeah, maybe some of it was. Some of those movies and video games were. Take a look. Explore. What are your thoughts on Jim Jones? He was a bad person. I don't know, what else can you call a murderer other than a really bad person? Not a good guy at all. Hey CF, long-time listener here. I haven't contributed to your show in a long time. I have a question for you. I don't think you're a prophet, but you tend to give good advice, so I'd figure I'd come to you. I've been thinking about pursuing a woman I've known for the past few weeks. She's beautiful and kind, and doesn't seem to act like most modern women. Well, it's only been a few weeks. It's easy to put your best foot forward in interacting with people for just a few weeks in limited situations. Although she doesn't act slutty, I fear she might be like most young people and believe that a relationship has to be sexual to be serious. And I feel very torn as to how I would react if that is the case. Well, you tell her the truth. If she's too forward, then, say, hey, slow down. That's it. If you're honest, if it doesn't come off like an attack on her, then, if she's good, she'll understand. What I'm asking is whether or not anything good can come from a relationship with someone who buys into the idea that premarital sex is a natural progression in any relationship, or if I should try to find a woman who believes that it is always wrong to have sex before marriage in order to avoid the problem entirely. Well, if she seems too eager to steal your innocence and she'll move on if she can't, that's not a good woman to be around. You don't want to be around that. She's not loyal. You share your values with a woman, and a woman shares her values with a man during the courtship process to ensure that the other has sufficient virtue. And you would hope that they're just not saying it just to make you feel better. You would hope that what their virtues, their values, that those are sincerely held. Those are sincerely held convictions. You would hope that. And so, I mean, it's difficult to determine that within a few weeks. It's difficult to determine that. And it's like, you don't need to lay it all up front, like right there, like, what are your values? What are your virtues? But, there are things you look out for. You don't be autistic about it. You got to use your powers of discernment to determine whether or not she is being sincere. And if she's telling you good things and she's sincere about them, great. But that takes time to really get a read on their soul. And, meeting their family would help too. Good day, CF. I only just learned about your show, but was hooked almost instantly. I'd basically been driving myself insane because I knew the Western world was doomed, and the only thing I could save it was massive Christian revival, which only God can do. I kept thinking about what I could do to try and save it. For example, try to exterminate the Muslim infestations we've allowed to grow in our countries. Well, the Muslim infestations are chemotherapy, violent chemotherapy, but you get what you put out. If you put out apathy and depravity, somebody's going to take umbrage with that. Because we are in a unique situation in the Western world where everything we do is exported to the rest of it. All right? Almost every culture is downstream from us. For whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a thing. That's what happens. It's what we're putting into that, we're putting sewage into that stream. If we're going to keep with that analogy. And some people are like, gee, I don't like that sewage. I'm going to go to the place that's spilling it out to us and take care of it. It's a natural consequence of our behavior, of what we accept in our culture, what we promote in our culture, which is depravity. And of course, these places we are affecting with our garbage, they have their own problems, but human nature is backwards. We always take care of the external problem before the internal one. But that does not grant us permission to export depravity, to be that external problem. So what else does this say? Obviously, that sort of crusade shit is stupid. Listening to your show and a good sermon at church this week have taught me what I already knew, that only God can save us, and all I can do is pray and watch my own walk with God. As is to be expected, as soon as I accepted this, I was no longer bothered by a worrisome desire to kill. That said, if God does save the day and send a massive Christian revival, can we then get rid of our Muslim infestations by any means necessary? I hate having to worry about my sister getting raped by those dirty fucking subhumans, and feel letting them stay in a regenerate Christian nation is only asking for trouble later down the line. Obviously, if they convert, I'm fine with them. I don't hate them because of their race, though TBH, they're ugly as sin. Well, look, if people are genuinely Christ-loving in their hearts, you're not going to get people who hate Christ around you. You're not going to attract that kind of attention. Your culture will be strong from its roots. Why do you think the Bible focuses mostly on common people? Who, of course, are made exceptional by virtue of their stories being told in the Bible, but you do have stories of kings and very wealthy people, great people, but you have a very heavy focus on what's happening at the ground level, ground zero. Christ, he picked common people to be his apostles. And that's who he rubbed shoulders with. He didn't manifest himself as a king ruling from on high. He manifested himself, God manifested himself in human flesh as an average person. And that is the most influential level of culture. The roots of your culture. The foundation of it. If your foundation is mostly one type of people, a people who do the right things for the right reasons, in accordance to God's law, you're not going to attract the company of people, and they're not going to stick around. They're not going to stick around people who follow God's law. People who hate God's law aren't going to stick around people who follow it. Again, it is the internal battle that is most important, because that's what hurts you the most. If you are sick, if you have an enemy within, all your other efforts are poison. I understand why the term esoteric Trumpism has certain connotations, but I would hope that you can see past the shitposting into what the movement actually advocates for and what it does. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. You people promote depravity. You don't care. You think there are more important issues, which is just a code word for it's not an issue to us, so we're going to undermine your efforts in fixing it. On episode 99, you talked about the lack of healthy relationships between heterosexual men. I think one of the biggest things happening is the revival of exactly this and the rejection of gay Freudian position. Well, you can help the perception of that by not going on various forums, message boards, and saying that you can't find a QT red suppository GF, so you're gonna go gay because traps are the true red suppository. Yeah, I don't give a fuck if it's shit posting or if it's ironic. It's bullshit because it doesn't have a target. You're not doing this to make fun of depraved perverts who introduce the idea by making fun of themselves so that nobody makes fun of them. It's a defense mechanism. And it just so happens that everybody feels this way, so everybody's like, oh, well, I don't have to be ironic anymore. And then you get mad at the people for saying that you're not being ironic. You call them autistic. So I'm not referring to people on the internet either. It's real life relationships that promote healthy living all around. I'm not trying to defend kek worship or trap lust. I just don't think those people have much to do with the active. I'm not saying it. Just look at the Houston Goilers. They're a group that I think represents a light in the darkness. I guess my question would be, don't you think I'm just going to call it esoteric Trumpism is, or at least could be, a catalyst for improvement? As a side note, your consistency in making people look at white degeneracy is working. I think they're on the verge of defending values first instead of race. Well, I wouldn't go that far, because people are, I still see it on Twitter all the time, people whining about me. They're like, ooh, look, this thing that he acknowledged, it proves him wrong. Yeah, people are still very angry about what I say, so it's not happening anytime soon. But I'm glad that if what you're seeing is true, then, that's fine. That's good, even if it is a limited number. Lord knows we need more righteous people. Latest transanity, male mothers and male body. What? How do you feel about the coming rapture? Well, that's not gonna happen. I don't subscribe to rapture theology. Okay, hold on. It's loading. Why is it going so slow? Latest in transanity, the more male mothers and the end of the male body. These are the kinds of things you cannot make up. A report from Daily Mail documents the March of the Male Mums. Well, an article on Slate.com declares there's plainly no one type of body that we could accurately label a male body. What, you mean one with testes, a prostate gland, one without a uterus, that kind of male body? Let me guess, everybody's going to say, well, as long as they're red suppositoried, it doesn't matter. Morons until the very end. Look, this is how... If you view everything politically, you don't view people as people. You view them as political units, as I said earlier, and it's just a very unhealthy way to treat people. Very. So, how I feel about the coming rapture. Look, it'd be nice. It'd be nice if all God's elect were... Or, they all vanished up to heaven and all the terrible people are left here to suffer the tribulation. That would be nice, but that's not the way it's going to happen. Hola, Cochinero Commune. Did I pronounce that right? Thanks for commenting on my 1488 White Hispanic Nephew. I really enjoyed it. But any to the thing I want to share. Anyway, to the thing I want to share. Okay. Well, looking for Swedish degeneracy in Google Images, I found an ad made by the Colorful Europeans. They made an AIDS campaign using degenerate way to advertise, link at the bottom. The only warning I can give is nudity, not classified as porn in the EU. Please give your opinions on the image and God bless you. So I wanted to look at something with nudity. Fine. Oh, I saw this. It's like some naked chick, like in Swedish flag body paint, and she's like knelt before, I think that's the German flag. She's knelt before a guy. It looks like a black guy painted in the colors of the German flag. And then you have Finland and two men, naked men who are in, I think that's Norway. Excuse me, Norway body paint, and another one of the Teutonic nations body paint. Then you have, I think, Romania and Portugal. And then you have France and England. So 25% homo here. But hey, at least they have, those kind of haircuts that signal to everybody how much you like engaging in implicit white identity. What else? Hey, CF, do you ever lurk on 8chan's Christian board? No. Last time I went on 8chan, it was either threads that devolved into bitching about me, or threads that degenerated into tranny defending. So, no, I don't go on 8chan. I don't go on the image boards anymore because it just depresses me. The only times I read from those are screenshots that people send to me. So maybe that's a good place, but I just don't go on there. And because at this stage of the game, every time I do, it does nothing for me. It does worse than nothing for me. So, hey, see, I've just wanted to ask you, wait, what? Oh, okay, it was deleted. Hey, see, I've just wanted to ask about your thoughts on lifting or personal fitness. In some of your recent episodes, you seem to paint it in a less than favorable fashion, to say the least. Perhaps I'm just misunderstanding you. Thanks, God bless, and keep up the good work. I don't care if you stay in good shape. I don't care if you lift. I don't care if you lift heavy things on a regular basis. That doesn't cause me any concern. What causes me concern is these bodybuilder fags who fetishize the male aesthetic, and people who are really into their lifting and bodybuilding, which I understand. Bodybuilding and personal fitness, two different things. People who are strong, who have functional athleticism, who are in good shape, they don't look like bodybuilders. They just look like athletic, healthy people. It was some number of weeks ago that we read about how the professional bodybuilding circuit is nothing more than disguised male prostitution, gay prostitution at that. And I've received anecdotal accounts about it. People have sent me screenshots about lifters and the butt plugs they use to keep their guts inside of them. Like, what the hell? What are you people doing to yourselves? So, yeah, anyone who takes their bodybuilding very seriously, it seems like the majority of them reach a tipping point where they begin to fetishize the male aesthetic, and it's all downhill from there. First thing, you start getting them gains. You're lifting more and more all the time, and then next thing you know, you're in a Speedo on stage. You haven't eaten for 48 hours, and then, after you're done flexing on stage, you go backstage, you're getting groped by some old queer, and you're getting paid for it. What kind of life is that? That's not a life. That is death. This next part is a story, just a story, me venting. Feel free to read it however I feel as though it will piss you off, as it certainly pissed me off experiencing it and typing it. I watched CFR episode 98, and that abortion story hits very close to home and enraged me beyond any reasonable explanation. Oh wait, I do have an explanation. It's a bunch of vapid cunts celebrating the murder of children, their own children. Anyways, about 2 months ago now, my best friend, a man who I considered a brother, showed up at my door 12 a.m. weeping and unable to speak. I let him into my apartment and asked him what was wrong, to no avail. I left him to cry on the couch and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up, cooked us some breakfast, and woke him. And asked him again what was wrong. He explained to me that he and his girlfriend had been actively trying to have children. It was his girlfriend who suggested trying, as her parents are very well off and could help pay for any expenses a child or 2 or 3 could pose. He agreed. She was the woman he intended to marry after all. And he thought getting started early couldn't hurt. It hurt very much because for 3 weeks she had been very sick, showing signs of pregnancy. She told him that she took the test and it was negative and it was just the flu. He believed her despite her saying she threw out the test. I see where this is going. I don't like it. and gave her the time to get better. And when it wore off, he asked her if she wanted to try again. Her response was crying and telling him that she had been pregnant and got an abortion without him knowing because she realized she wasn't ready. She literally didn't care that she had just murdered half of herself and half of him, their son or daughter-to-be. She who had just weeks ago suggested having kids. Even I felt betrayed. The woman who my best friend was set to marry, who I would open my door for in her time of need, would do something so fucking vile and disturbing with no prior indication of such depravity. I can't even imagine how he must have felt. Anyways, at the very least, there is a dim and distant light at the end of the tunnel with a bit of pressure from me. He is on the path of Christ and now recovering. Well, I hope he's okay. I hope he ends up all right. I hope he abandons that whore and never looks back. Hello again, CF. I wish I had sent this for your 100th episode as it would have fit with the story you opened with. Specifically with how the West pushes the gay agenda on foreign isolated cultures. There's a really good example of this from a television series called Don't Tell My Mother, where the host Diego Buñuel travels to regions with bad reputations. In one of the episodes, he travels to North Korea pretending to be a French tourist. At one point, he is shown an ostrich farm, which is where the show decides to zero in on an odd and probably small part of their conversation. I have a timestamp of that part at the end if you or anyone else wants to watch it later. But I'll give you a quick rundown of what happens. One of the two guys is explaining how ostriches mate, which the host then uses as a segue to move their discussion to homosexuals because we are talking about sex. His quote, probably. Yeah, it is. He asks if there are any in the country. The first guy says yes, that it is illegal. The second guide is confused and asks, what is a homosexual? The first guide tells him, but then the host interrupts and starts explaining what bisexuals are to him. He gets a look of disgust and claims, what? He then remains silent for several seconds before saying, we don't even know that word. I'm not really sure of what else to say with that. I think it kind of speaks for itself. Good luck, CF, and God bless. Yeah, North Koreans don't have enough troubles as it is, do they? You gotta add your West. We have to defend the West. Pulse the nightclub attack was an attack on the West. The fact that, never mind, I'm not going on that tangent. Yeah, fuck this guy, I hope he dies. I wish they would have kidnapped him and put him in a labor camp for 2 decades. That's what I wish they would have done with him. I hope that he goes back, cause he you know what? No, he's not gonna go back, cause he knows what he did, but you know what? I really hope that, the next person to try that garbage, they get put into a prison camp. Shalom, CF. I know that you seemingly don't like Donald Trump, or at least the cult of personality around him and some of his more degenerate sodomite followers. Well, as you sow, so shall you reap. But what do you think of Vladimir Putin? I only ask because I've seen the two compared a lot, but Putin seems to be a more moral man, and Russia certainly hasn't succumbed to the cultural rot that has consumed the West. Well, if I'm not mistaken, the Orthodox Church has grown under him. And pretty much every conceivable area of life has improved under Putin. He's one of the few significant world leaders that has taken a stand against sodomy, which Donald Trump has not. Anti-porn, yeah, that's a good thing, but Trump, he's succumbed to the sodomite lobby. He bowed before it. He kneeled before it. But despite that, it is good that Trump wants to work with Russia. Up until the point where Newt Gingrich and what else? Kissinger, until they get in his here. They're homophobic, right? Since neocons are all about the gay agenda. Look, I have this book that I just got. It's over on my shelf right now. I'm not going to get it, but yeah. It's like Dick Cheney, Colin Powell, Laura Bush, all saying love is love, love is love. So, yeah. Fuck them. CF, what are your thoughts on people who dox others? I think it's a pretty stupid and petty thing to do, especially when the most doxing ability that you'll see usually is like, ooh, look, I found your real name. What are you gonna do now? So it's a pretty stupid thing to do from all conceivable angles. Hey CF, A Finn here. We all know your show is for Finnish people after all. I make, my videos are for many people. Serbian, Finnish, Mexican, Jewish. Only a few of which I've actually said. You know, people say a lot of strange things about you to make themselves feel better about the rupture you've caused in their brain by contradicting some deeply held convictions they have. Oh, that guy's just a juice-spick autist. That's a common one. What else? I'd like to hear your input on one thing. Yeah, from the Finnegan. Okay. Continuing, I'd like to hear your input on one thing regarding the plague of secularism that we have here and that you have described so well. The highest authority of our state church, the archbishop or something, recently came out as a flamboyant sodomy enabler that now wants to force all the priests to start wedding homos, which just once more affirms what we already knew. Our church is paused by any measure. I left the church a long time ago because I wanted no part in funding this kind of counterproductive bullshit, but the sad part is I have no one to turn to with the theological questions I'm sometimes battling with. The Bible has been my guide, but since I never got a real Christian upbringing either, I'm sometimes left to rely on myself to make the correct interpretation. Needless to say, this is not ideal. I'm an engineer within the construction industry and my job involves computers and programming. And as a hobby, I love to read and study mathematics, physics, and science in general. I also love spending time in nature and have a deep fascination towards biology as well. All of this I feel is very useful for my general well-being. Most people I interact with are these I fucking love science morons who are either completely annoying atheists or some sort of pagans who worship all kinds of stupid, false idols. I become quite stoic about the fact that I get ridiculed for believing in God and the Bible since I'm sure God will judge us all appropriately in the end. But I have to admit I sometimes get pushed into the corner when discussing things like evolution, creation of the universe, and the soul. From biology, we know the theory of evolution by natural selection is a very good theory to explain and predict things about the fossil record and the peculiarities of different species. From physics, we know the Big Bang Theory, or perhaps more appropriately, the Great Inflation Theory. And the mathematical theories of mechanics do enable us understand and predict the behavior of celestial bodies, all sorts of electrical devices and structural beams for that matter. From computation, we know consciousness, some sort of image of the soul, does seem to emerge from a complex computational system. And yet we know that none of this so-called scientific knowledge that we can use to manipulate this domain that God created for us could even exist without God. But these peers of mine keep arguing this knowledge is proof of God not being real and the Bible not being the truth, because they seem to think that they contradict the Bible. Any advice on how to deal with this would be appreciated. Well, you deal with it by saying first yourself that the Bible is not a math textbook. It's like picking up a book about dinosaurs, reading it, and then complaining that there are no recipes in this book about dinosaurs. The Bible is a guidebook of the soul, and that is what it should be used for. I get this all the time. Oh, the earth is 6,000 years old, or is not 6,000 years old. I get this all the time. People who say, oh, the earth is actually X amount of years old, therefore what the Bible says isn't true. I mean, think about the amount of steps missing from that. The Earth is... Look, we don't know how old the Earth is. And it doesn't matter how old it is because God's law is still true. If you violate God's law, bad things will happen to you. Okay, the Earth is 620 million years old. Let's say that. Okay, it's that many years old. Does being a sodomite still leads you to an early grave? Still puts undue strain on finite medical resources? And that is just one example. Coveting thy neighbor's wife leads to broken homes. And so on. Whether the earth is 6,000 years old, 6 million years old, 600 million years old, right and wrong transcend time and place. And this is what your quote-unquote friends don't understand. And they never will. And there needs to come a time where you say, you know what, there's nothing I can do. You don't have to say it to them, but you could say it to yourself. Put that in your heart and be at peace with it. Peace. Doesn't that sound nice? I just don't understand these people. I don't. Who say, the earth is this many years old, therefore... all of that stuff in, what was it, Deuteronomy 28? All that stuff, nah, that doesn't happen even though it's happening right now. All because the Earth is a different age than some people might think it is. It's absurd. Finishing up here, it says, do you think we can ever coexist with secular or infidel people? Or is it our duty to either convert or exile them, or just, well, be done with them? I know you're not a priest, but I think you actually just might make a pretty good one. Thanks. Gotta go fast. Go fast for Israel. Zionic the Hedgehog says, nuke Iran and make it fast. But with secular or infidel people, there's still some hope for them because they could still have their doubts, but they could still follow the law. But it says in James chapter 2, it says, you believe that God is one, you do well. Even the demons believe and shudder. So the demons believe, but they're not obedient. It is disobedience that makes you a reprobate. And I think that, it's not, I think it works best like this. You start following the law. You start viewing, you start living the right way, you live the right way, you stick with it, and then you see like, well, if they're right about this, maybe they're right about this other stuff, and it starts all falling into place, and that's where the belief comes in. So I think that you got to put it into action first, a leap of faith, so to speak. That's how it worked for me, and maybe it'll work for a lot of other people too. What do you think of the phenomenon of polyglottalism? I personally know fragments of German, Spanish, Russian, and Polish as well as being brought up with English. I hope to be fluent in German within the next 2 years and will probably work on Polish or Russian after that if I get there, God willing. My visit to Poland, which I posted about earlier, prompted me to think about it a bit more critically though. While my intentions are primarily to foreign books without translation and interact with foreigners in their own tongue, many become bilingual out of necessity so as to take advantage of the many conveniences of the Anglo zeitgeist. Lingual insularity clearly helps cultural insularity, and multilingualism likewise allows for easier culture exchange. I hold that cultural exchange is not necessarily good and perhaps very good. Not necessarily good and perhaps very good, yeah. Without it, life would be very difficult. Some arguments could be made for the merits of that, but not now. Isn't it funny how some race idolaters reject Christianity on the count of being from a foreign land while using Indo-Arabic numerals without a thought? These days, most exchanges seem to be almost exclusively negative to the countries involved. Would halting the spread of cultures like this through languages by not teaching foreign languages in schools and discouraging their use be a worthwhile thing to do? This is on the navel-gazing side of things, and for that I apologize, but I would be interested in your thoughts. Also, if you're considering a vacation in the lands of the Slav, southern Poland, particularly the Malopolska region near Krakow, is very nice and quite affordable. Better than Serbia, to be honest. Well, I hope nobody takes offense to that. That might anger some people. I don't think learning a second or third or fourth, any additional languages after that, I don't think that's ever caused any culture to collapse. What causes the globalized hell world is economic colonization, for which we are more responsible than we'd like to admit. I support the learning of additional languages because it's always something I've wanted to do, and I regret that when I was younger, it's always presented to me as an academic subject, and language in an academic context, some people might learn languages well in an academic context, but I never did. I always did well on the tests, did fine there, did fine on the assignments, but it never stuck because it was always something academic. It wasn't like I was living and breathing the language. I wasn't living through the thought process that leads to this form of language. And that's what language is. It is the best view we have into how people think. And in California, you have a lot of Mexican kids who grow up in bilingual households. They don't learn English and Spanish as academic subjects. They're immersed in it. They get both of that. And so they speak both generally very fluently. So I think that is an argument in favor of learning languages through living, through immersion, through living everyday life and just immersing yourself in that language, and you'll figure it out eventually. But that's my view of it. That's the impression I get. And like I said, some people probably do learn language pretty well in the academic environment, and Of all these subjects, of all the propaganda schools teach, of all the teachers spouting nonsense, passing on their memes, their viruses to children, I think teaching foreign languages, that's the least of our concern. Your critiques border on brotherly advice and pathetic self-deprecation. I can't seem to read you. Which is it? I agree that one has to have a weak soul to fall victim to the rubbish the Jew is selling, but is the blame entirely upon their shoulders? It is akin to saying that because the government makes a decision, it is also the decision of the people as well. Example, Merkel's open border policy is not what many Germans voted for. Most wish to change, but are betrayed from within. Well, again, this falls on their shoulders because they voted for her. I fail to understand how taking responsibility for your faults is self-deprecation. Hey, my fellow Germans, let's elect a woman from former communist Germany. That'll work out. Same retardation in America. A plurality of Americans are of German descent, mind you. Let's elect this Indonesian mulatto whose parents are communists. That can't go wrong. Change, right, guys? Am I right? Nobody learns the right lessons from history. The fall of communism happened very recently. Very recently, and all we learn from it is, yeah, woo, USA, number one. Not, that communism thing, look at what it did to them. But we think we're special. We think we can make anything work. Yeah, we can make white people communism work. Yeah, sure, why not? Let's do it. Yeah, that's what some people actually believe, that white people have the Midas touch. Look, when it's all said and done, you still have to live life. No matter what's going on out there, you still have to wake up from one day to the next and make choices. You don't know what those choices may be, but you still have to live your life. All right, so every decision you can make can lead to a brighter tomorrow, can lead to a better tomorrow. If not for the whole world, for your soul. You are the last line of defense. Your soul is the last line of defense. It doesn't matter if the president is crazy, the police are corrupt. If you are still a decent person, you have a good soul, there's nothing they can do about that. So this is why I say, instead of wasting all our time and energy trying to stop these things that are happening outside of us, why don't we reel it in, take a look in the mirror, and figure out, what about ourselves needs fixing? And it turns out there is a lot of problems on the individual level. And that's what people need to do, which is why I say, find out how you're responsible. Find out what evil you're responsible for bringing into the world. But, this assumes that people have a soul to maintain, and unfortunately, if people don't understand that, they don't have a soul themselves, which is sad. But, there's nothing you can say to those people. So I hope you have one. I hope you get what I'm saying now. I hope you understand. On another note, I've been reading the Bible recently and am interested in why the Jews are listed as God's chosen people. What does this mean? Is it an act of favoritism or just circumstantial in regards to the region only Jews existed? Does this come with any obligations? I don't understand. I thought that the mercy of the Lord was based on having to first commit a sin. If non-Jews are literally at a disadvantage for not being as favorable in the eyes of the Lord, then how can it be said that the Lord loves all his children? Well, you've clearly never read Revelation or Titus. Doesn't say too many nice things about the Jews in those books. Look at it from a practical perspective. There are three tribes that Noah's sons created. You have Japheth, Ham, and Shem, Jews, of course, belonging to Shem, Shemites, Semites, that's where we get that from. And God started the life cycle of these tribes at different points in time. You got to start somewhere, all right? And so the Jews at that point in time were the only people who had two brain cells to rub together to comprehend what was being said and done to them. The Proto-Europeans are still up there, expending all their energy trying not to freeze to death. The Hamites, they're still incubating, whatever. So to dismiss God's choices for the one reason that, well, he chose the Jews first is child logic. He already touched it. I don't want it. It's stupid. Especially when you read the New Testament where you see Jews turning Jesus over to the Romans for hate speech and trying to get him in trouble for performing miracles on the Sabbath. And you gotta understand, the only reason Jews hate white people is because they're out of touch. They still think white people are Christian for some reason. The Jews of today aren't as on the pulse of things as we believe. So I don't know if I read this last part of your comment here, but it says, if non-Jews are literally at a disadvantage for not being as favorable in the eyes of the Lord, then how can it also be said that the Lord loves all his children? Well, Christ explained this in the Bible. He says, look, you're not going to be judged as a Jew or as a Greek. Everyone is going to be judged according to the same standard. Your ethnicity, your tribe has nothing to do with that because you're all being held to the same standard. Who first received God's word has no relevance on who gets into heaven or who's in God's favor. So I hope that helps. Would you rather be a World War II fighter pilot or a Vietnam-era Marine helicopter pilot? Well, the World War II generation gave us the baby boomers. Thanks a lot, you assholes. And Vietnam-era, it's not exactly the best time to be alive either. And, well, at least with World War II, you can fool yourself into thinking that you're fighting for a decent country, for decent people. You could fool yourself even though the Roaring 20s are still in recent memory. So it's like, how do people delude themselves into thinking that they're fighting for people worth dying for? More decent people existed in the 20th century than they do now. I understand this, but how many? The cultural rot had already set in. The civilization had reached its the event horizon of decay. But, some people weren't too aware of that. So that's a tough question. One I'm not sure I can answer definitively. Hey, CFI recently met up with some people of fairly like-mindedness. Good Christians, sick of degeneration and all that, but not edgy LARPers or anything political, and had a better day and felt a stronger friendship than I have had with any of my normal friends who I've known for most of my life. Throughout the entire day, neither of us used our phones for anything other than to play music or to read messages. Earlier that week, I met up with my regular friends at the pub for a simple opportunity to reminisce and talk about what we're going to do now that we've finished all education besides university. However, my friends were glued to their phones almost the entire evening, doing shit like Pokemon Go or taking selfies to send to people who weren't there. That and all they wanted to talk about was how much pot they had done recently or how many girls they'd fucked whilst doing pot. I felt like a stranger and sadly bought more drinks than I wanted to so I could put up with my friends. Quote-unquote friends. What was the worst part? The worst part was hearing of how a strong Christian girl I knew, the sort who sang in the church choir every week and helped with the youth group and everything else, was caught having lesbian sex after eating pot brownies in a stranger's house. All my friends seemed to have gone from interesting and unique people to brain-dead idiots who only want to stare at their phones, smoke weed, have sex, or talk about smoking weed and having sex. Genuinely interesting people when they were younger, but now they're all the same dull robot, incapable of holding a decent conversation or catching up with a friend. That being said, I'm glad I got to meet them again, mainly as an example of what not to do and who to avoid. And comparing them to my new group of companions has given me confidence that there are people out there who aren't brain dead. I hope you get better, CF, and continue making such eye-opening content. I genuinely think you're doing loads more good than any false political movement. Thank you for the words of encouragement. So, reminisce and talk about what you're going to do now that you've all finished education besides university. Well, school is good for one thing. It is good for enforcing a perverse cultural cohesion, where everybody has something in common, and what they have in common is filth. Everyone's so happy dwelling within a world of shit as long as they can be together or with each other You know how I used to talk about people taking the path of least resistance because people are, that's just how they are. They're lazy. This is the path of least resistance. Hedonism is now, the cost to benefit ratio is now more beneficial in the eyes of the reprobate because, it's a lot, people find it more interesting. People find hedonists more interesting than genuinely unique, engaging people. That's the fact of the matter. When people hear stories of debauchery from their peers, they say, wow, that's so cool. You smoked a bunch of weed. You got blackout drunk. You're a sodomite. Wow, you're so cool. And in the idiot mind of the social creature that is the human, they're like, oh, okay, I'm interesting now. And I didn't have to put any real work into it. Great, I'm going to keep doing that. And there you have it. That is what you see. You say they're genuinely interesting people when they were younger, but now they're all the same dull robot, incapable of holding a decent conversation or catching up with a friend. There you have it. Because in order to have a decent conversation or catch up with an old friend, you need to have something going on. You need to have something about you that is, you work at. Something you put effort into. But in absence of that, you can be a hedonist and people are like, wow, you're so cool. Our culture incentivizes hedonistic behavior. Simple as that. The more, like, you get what you give. You get out what you put in. And what we put in is trash. And what we get out is trash. Because that's what we want. We're like, wow, you're so cool. I don't know why. There's no, it's like it feels good maybe for a second. But then you need more of it to achieve that same effect. And eventually it'll get to a point where you can't consume enough to achieve that euphoria. You just need to do it to feel normal. That's the nature of sin. That's the nature of addiction. Yet people still do it because they want to seem interesting in the eyes of the world. And I don't know why. I don't know what's out there. I don't know what's in the hearts of people that's causing them to react in such a way. For them to react positively to debauchery and hedonism. The only way you can explain it is that there's either a demon dwelling within them, they have allowed a demon to take residence in their soul, or their soul is dead completely. And at that point, it's like, well, it's not really sad if they die because they're already dead. The culture finds drug addiction more interesting than having a soul and having a moral compass. It is upsetting. What's this? It's a video. I'm just gonna silence. Oh yeah, that mother-father incest thing, and they're crying at everybody. Accept us, and then Chris Chan, I think he posted something, and he like admitted that he has dreams about having sex with his mom. So there you go, the new frontier. We thought it was going to be 5 years from now that incest acceptance would be the new push. It wasn't even 5 years, not even close. Poll is truly dead, Imgur link. It says, what? Keck is with us. Yes, CF is autistic, but don't return the favor. He's a blue-pilled Christ fag who insulted Keck and doesn't like Trump because some fags support him. Well, Trump supports them. You get what you give. And he seems to be in an abusive relationship as well. Why is he staying with an abusive woman and allowing their child to go through all of that? What child? Why are you people obsessed with my imaginary children? It's really weird. Greetings from New York City. Here on vacation with my family, and it is just as bad as I thought it was. Though that is not my question for the week. I'll get out there alive. I hope. How do you feel about females that whine and complain about dress codes in schools? Proto-skanks, that's what they are. Stuff like girls should be able to wear more revealing clothes and guys shouldn't be distracted by said clothing. Well, why else would they dress revealingly? They're not expressing anything other than they want sexual attention. That's the idea that they're expressing, that they want sexual attention. They want to dress, they want to show some skin, and they want sexual attention from guys, that they don't deem creepy, of course. The question popped into my head as the person I was thinking of moved to New York and was raised a Christian. Yeah, here's the deal. these are girls who don't find any value in developing a personality, having a good soul, and attracting decent people through that, attracting a decent husband through that by being a nice, smart, virtuous woman. They don't find any value in that. They find value in being an object of sexual desire. That's their goal in life. These girls who are against dress codes, they say like, oh, I want to express myself. First of all, you're like 15. You have nothing worth expressing, and what you do have to express is filthy. And who wants a filthy 15-year-old to express herself? Only perverts. Young girls who oppose dress codes are proto-skanks. They're already on their way. And with all that, I believe the Reddit questions are done. Did I lock the thread? I hope I locked the thread. Hold on, we're already like 2.5 hours in. Yeah, I locked it. Good. Remove the announcement. And we are done. Look, this is the longest episode ever by a comfortable margin. So I do have emails, but I'm going to cut it here because I've been here for almost 2.5 hours. So I will thank you for listening if you're listening in this far. It's a marathon episode, really good. Longest episode ever. I never thought I'd be able to get here, but I did. And it is in part thanks to you, the listener. And to you, I am grateful. All my gratitude. So, what else? So, yeah, Common Filth Extra, not as long as this episode, but a good episode. Check that out, $1 or more, episode 30, on commonfilthradio.bandcamp.com. If you have any Amazon.com purchases, you live in America, or you're buying from American Amazon, click the referral link below. It'll send you to Amazon's front page. Search for your item, add it to your cart, check out. After clicking on that link, I think within 24 hours. And I get a percentage of whatever you buy at no extra cost to you. So that's another way you could support what I do here. And that is all. So until next time, my friends, take care of yourselves. Be good to each other. Talk to you soon.